Monster Hunter Rise is a hunting game where you learn an incredible amount of small details which eventually add up to you having an arsenal of tools, weapons, and gear to take down Godzilla! In this edition of Monster Hunter, you have the addition of Palamutes, rideable dog helpers, in addition to your Palicos, cat helpers with opposable thumbs. Slap into the mix Wirebugs, which lets you play like Spider-Man, and you've got yourself a recipe for a good time. So, before we start in earnest with this review, I've got a couple acknowledgements to make. First, I played the heck out of Monster Hunter Rise. I played through it on the Switch in 2021, and completed all the quests, and nearly got all of the achievements, if you will. Then it came out on Steam in 2022, and my brothers and I were like, we're doing it again! I've got several hundred hours on the Switch and several more hundred on Steam. Second, there's a crazy amount of stuff in Monster Hunter Rise. When I first got the game, I literally sat on the help screen and read every tutorial box. And let me tell you, that was exhausting. It felt like I was studying for a college test. I'm going to do my best not to get carried away with the details, so it's overwhelming. Just know the rabbit hole goes very, very deep. Way deeper than I've gone, and I'm like 400 hours in now. Third, I'm going to keep this review to the core game. I'm not going to talk about the Sunbreak expansion. For cost effectiveness, get them both on sale or bundled together, but Sunbreak will get its own review, if I ever get around to making it. Lastly, at the time of this review, I'm seeing a lot of people on Steam review bomb Monster Hunter Rise because Capcom added DRM to the game. DRM stands for Digital Rights Management. And shame on you, Internet, for making me go learn stuff. It's basically Capcom added something to combatant video game piracy, and people have problems with it for various reasons. Some say that DRM can be detrimental to gameplay smoothness. For others, it hinders mod development or installation, and still others say that DRM software might pose security risks, bloatware, or even malware. I wish I could offer some helpful advice or add my opinion in a meaningful way to the discussion, but I'm going to tell you right up front, I can't. I haven't noticed anything weird about my game, I don't use mods, so I'm not part of that world, and if I've installed malware, well shit, too late for me now, none of my computer security stuff spoke up to warn me. This doesn't mean my opinion is passive. Modding communities let you make the game you want to play. I also want smooth gameplay, and I don't want malware, spyware, or viruses on my computer. Seems like a reasonable opinion to me. Have you ever tried to pay attention to a Monster Hunter game's story? I guess I've only played World, Rise, and Now, but coming from Monster Hunter World, the story is actually improved significantly in Monster Hunter Rise. I'm going to put the story in my own words. After you've created your beautiful, or ugly, wholly unique character, and your pet cat and dog, you'll be hanging out in your bedroom, in the village, when two clones walk in on you and say some suggestive stuff. Then tell you that the village elder leader chief guy wants to talk to you because you're officially a monster hunter now. Yay! But now you have responsibility, and that means you're going to do some chores and help slay monsters of varying difficulty. Eventually working your way up to fighting against something called a rampage, which the elder tells you took place 50 years ago. You see, a bunch of monsters got together and decided to have a dance party right on top of your village, but you can't have that because you live there. After you fend off the rampage and send those tap-dancing communist monsters home, you'll encounter the box art monster, who's apparently the mastermind behind all this. So naturally you're tasked with kicking Magna Marshmallow's butt, and the village elder does some weird laughing and gives you a sword. The end. But wait, there's more. There's always more. That's how Monster Hunter tells its stories, or at least since World. The line, "There's always a bigger fish," comes to mind. Eventually you figure out what's behind the disturbance to the ecosystem, but only if you keep playing and keep on monster hunting. And they can always add in another mastermind monster behind the last one if they need to. Welcome to the franchise, ladies and gentlemen. I never said the story was good. I'm just saying it's better than what I experienced in Monster Hunter World. And if that mess of an explanation doesn't get you, just imagine what a garbage dumpster fire that story was in World, where you were researchers. Researchers? What kind of researchers research by murder? Actually, don't answer that. I don't think I can handle the truth. It probably hits a bit closer to home than I had initially thought. Anyway, here's the good news. You're not here for the story anyway. The story for Monster Hunter games is just a respite between hunts. Does it matter why you're going to go kill the big bear guy? No, you're just going to hunt him because he's the next one up on the chopping block. But sure, if you want a reason...
This is terrible. If it goes on eating this much, there won't be a single fish left for us to catch. Hunt that thing before the fish totally vanish from our rivers, will ya?
Again, the story isn't important. It isn't interesting. It's a break between quests. I wouldn't want the story removed from the game, but it really doesn't matter to the game. It's just there. You know what I mean? There'll always be a bigger fish. There's always the next monster after it. And it's either an invasive species which needs to be killed, or it's causing trouble somehow, and now you gotta go kick it between the legs until it takes a dirt nap. I'm sorry if there's some big Monster Hunter lore people out there, but I just really didn't feel like there was some deep underlying storytelling in the game. It felt like they just bent the story to shoehorn in the next monster. If I'm wrong, feel free to tell me. Sometimes I've been called out, and it's been rather pleasant to find out there's more to games than I realized. And now we've finally arrived at gameplay. This is the reason I've put off writing a review for Monster Hunter Rise for years. How do I compress all that I've learned from playing and explain at the same time that I have only truly experienced playing this game from one weapon perspective, the insect glaive? There's so much to say about gameplay, and I don't really know how to begin and how to organize it. For the sake of simplicity, let's go over the sequence of events leading up to a hunt. Gameplay is really broken down into pre-hunt and the hunt. Good news for beginners, the game starts out very streamlined with the clone twin named Hinoa giving you village quests. You can get started as quick as pick a weapon, eat a snack, pick a level. But as you rack up hours, you'll have items. Potions, rations, condition-removing items, trank bombs, nets, and other stuff. But you can worry about that when you're used to the game. Then you'll want to set up loadouts to streamline your inventory and gear management. I'm ashamed to say I didn't start doing that until hundreds of hours into the game. But I'm off on a tangent. Monster Hunter has a lot of different weapons and gear. Here's a list of 14 weapon categories for your viewing displeasure. Great sword, sword and shield, dual blades, long sword, hammer, hunting horn, lance, gun lance, switch axe, charge blade, insect glaive, bow, light bow gun, and heavy bow gun. Out of this quite long list, I can confidently say I'm only really familiar with the insect glaive. It's the weapon I used to beat the game. One brother used dual blades and pretended he was Sasuke from Naruto. The other brother used a hunting horn while we were playing together. I've heard the longsword is good, so good it's broken, and that the sword and shield is normally a good place to start for beginners. When I first played Monster Hunter World, I tried to be Cloud Strife with the great sword, but I hated how slow it attacked, and didn't really feel a good connection with any of the weapons because I really like mobility in video games. To get good with one of these weapons, it's going to take a long time. especially if you've never played a Monster Hunter game before. But one of the great things about this game is if you're tired of the pace you're fighting monsters, you can switch to another weapon and have a very different experience. But if you want more help with weapons, I can only advise you to look up weapon guides for it. There are plenty of guides out there for a game as detailed as Monster Hunter tends to be. Since I really only know the insect glaive, I'll just give you a quick explanation how it works. But I don't really suggest you start playing with this weapon, unless you try it out and you like how it feels, I guess. I first fire my bug at the monster. I collect red 1, white 2, and yellow 3 essences to fully charge my weapon up. Then I hit monsters in the air or on the ground. I watch the monster and ignore my character and watch for the tell signs of what attack is coming next. And I don't even know what to say those signs are anymore. I just see it move, and I try to dodge around it and keep beating it in the tail until the tail comes unglued or the part breaks. Oh, but wait! I've told you basically how to use the insect glaive, but we forgot to eat first. One of the things I had to struggle with to accept in Monster Hunter games is eat before you hunt. I don't think it would have saved me from how many times I died in Monster Hunter World, but in Rise, it finally clicked for me. You eat so you start the fight with increased health and stamina. I thought I was saving myself a few points or zenny by skipping food, but I also happen to be a complete and total idiot. Why are you even listening to me? I cannot overemphasize how diametrically opposed I was to eating in Monster Hunter World. If you're like me and want to save every tiny bit you can in video games, much like how I try to do in real life, you will make back your zenny times hundreds on hunts. Get the meal. Even if the buffs are worthless to you, at least you'll have full health and stamina. So that might need a bit more of an explanation, but when you start a quest, hunt, expedition, etc., if you didn't eat, you'll start out with a significantly smaller fraction of health and stamina. Never mind that you must watch the cooking scene at least once, because at this point, the cutscene is basically a feature of the game. After you gear up and eat food, then you go to twin number 1 for solo quests in the middle of town called the Steelworks. And you go to twin number 2 for group quests at the Gather Hub. Progress for both sets of quests are tracked separately. I also forget there are arena quests too, which are different than all the other quests because they give you specific gear and weapons to accomplish the quest in a certain amount of time to get a letter grade. Again, to reiterate, you can't use your higher level gear for arena quests. There's no way to make it easier. I don't get good grades. I don't do arena quests. As always with Monster Hunter games, there's so much more we could go into, like gear for your pals, armor stats, armor sets, decorations, which are special ability gems, ammo for different weapons, there's cosmetic stuff, which unlocks later for layered armor skins, lots of different items, crafting menus, buying items, sales, the lottery, loadouts, and more. I'm sure I still haven't even begun to scratch the surface. Hell, there's a whole area dedicated to buddy training, including hiring, training mercenaries who go and gather items for you while you're off hunting. You can put your cats into submarines to go find things for you. But again, you can and should definitely check out all that Monster Hunter Rise has to offer you. And there's literally a tutorial hint pop-up box for every new thing you encounter, which you can then review in your Hunter info, if you tend to skip pop-up tutorials like most of us do. Again, for new players, I suggest what you want to focus on is try out the weapons and choose your favorite, eat a meal from the Dongo Girl, pick a quest, and start hunting. Okay, I don't think we've even scratched the surface, but we will assume you've got your weapon and equipment figured out. You ate a healthy, hearty meal of various colored snowmen, and you've started your quest. Now, at last, we have come to the gameplay loop. Before you run over and punch that monster you're hunting in the face, you need to bird up. The less catchy name they use in Monster Hunter Rise is permabuffers, which are little speary birds which boost your stats when you collect them. Typically before I hunt, I make a loop and grab some of the birds. How much of a boost you'll get will depend on an equipped piece of gear called a pedalace. Something which always bothered me when I first started playing Rise was that even after I ate food, I still had a gray part of my health and stamina bar. That gray part goes away when you bird up. If you get enough little green birds, your health bar increases. Enough yellow birdies and your stamina bar will increase to its max length. It's the same for all colors and stats. Green, health; red, attack; yellow, stamina; orange, defense. On special missions, you'll get a rainbow birdie, which will bring all permabuffers to max level. So now you've birded up, gathered whatever you wanted from around the map. Now what? Now we dance the dance of death! Pummel your monster with whatever you can, be it toads, spiders, blades, hammers, ammos, or even other monsters. People familiar with Monster Hunter games will know and expect the hunt will last for some time. You'll need to stop to sharpen your weapon, sometimes you need to retreat to eat food to bring back your stamina bar, or drink potions to replenish your health. Speaking of health, there are no health bars for the monsters here. You don't know how much damage you need to do until you see a blue icon appear on the boss and it starts to limp away. At this point, you need to make a decision. Kill or capture? The answer depends on the materials you want. Be sure to check your hunter's notes on large monsters to see what you should do. For simplicity's sake, let's say you want to capture it. You need to have a net and tranquilizers with you. Requirements to capture a monster. It needs to be capturable. Not all monsters are. It needs to be in low enough health. Blue icon, limping. You need to catch it in a trap. And lastly, you need to trank it a couple of times. Typically, I catch it in the trap and then toss down trank bombs until it's caught. Oh, and don't forget, if you kill it instead of capturing, carve it for parts. Again, I'm trying to make things simple, but there's just so many variables. When you're starting out, you can just build gear willy-nilly without any regard to set bonuses. Whatever you make is an upgrade and it will get you by. You don't need to hunt the same monsters over and over again for specific parts to build your gear. But you will need to do that eventually. And at that point, you want to be well acquainted with your hunter notes. Your hunter notes is basically your in-game wiki page for information on monsters large and small. Another note to be made here is I'm not going to cover every single monster you can fight in the game. There are some familiar faces for people who have played other Monster Hunter games, and there are some new creatures. When you're fighting them, they all have different appearances and attack patterns. It's one of those things where I just kind of picked up on it naturally from playing and seeing the monsters long enough. I'm not really sure how to explain it, and as you play on harder and harder difficulties, the monsters will have new moves which will mess you up if you don't stay on your toes. And regarding how you go about fighting monsters, oftentimes my brothers and I will grab a puppet spider, which is the cutest little guy by the way, I love him, and then we'll play bumper cars by riding one monster and knocking parts out of each monster on the map. You can also lure monsters into the same area and get them to fight for you. You can also set up explosive bombs as traps. You can hit and run. Depending on how well prepared you are, many hunts will last between 30 minutes to an hour. There's always a time limit for quests though, and usually the cutoff point is 50 minutes. If you ever wanted to explore a map, Expedition Tour is your best friend. It's just a way to free roam the map without worrying about that 50-minute cutoff time. Expedition Tour has random monsters, outbreaks, and upsurges that just happen, renew, and change over time. Expedition Tours are very good for exploring too. If you're trying to get those collectibles, fishing, cooking, or other activities that doesn't really involve hunting one specific monster. or the real metagame, which is playing the intense version of Pokemon Snap. Once you're finished with that quest, what are you standing around for? Do the next one. There's always another quest. Especially now with village quests, high and low rank hub quests, event quests, rampage quests, and with the expansion there's even more quests. Enough that I feel bad with how far behind I am for taking a year-long hiatus. That's worth elaborating on, actually. I tend to go hard on video games, and I played the heck out of Monster Hunter Rise. Then I took a break until it came to PC, and then I worked hard to get my stuff back. Then I took a break until the expansion came out, and then I played really hard until I inevitably took a break, and only paused my break to sit down and make this review. And that's basically how I play video games. So I kind of burnt myself out on Monster Hunter Rise, but it was definitely a good time. And considering I didn't like Monster Hunter World so much that I'd go and play on my own, it begs the question, why do I like Monster Hunter Rise so much more? I'm not a Dark Souls type player. Normally a long, arduous battle against one creature really doesn't appeal to me. But if I can quickly navigate the world, that helps keep me invested in the game. One of the biggest changes for me was feeling like I could move around the world more naturally and quickly. In Monster Hunter World, I had specific paths I needed to take. There were shortcuts if you knew the map. To be fair, I didn't learn the map like I learned in Rise. But in Rise, I can decide, no, I'll go around this mountain, or we're going over it, sucker! Which leads to probably the biggest change from World to Rise, Wirebugs. Wirebugs allows everyone to feel like Spider-Man. You can use them offensively and defensively. You can use Wirebugs to recover from being knocked down. If timed poorly, you can recover from being knocked down to being knocked down again, and that's just embarrassing. You can also use Wirebugs to launch yourself a bit higher up in the air, and as long as you're holding down the run button, you'll wall climb until your stamina runs out. Lastly, there are some moves which use Wirebug charges. The trade-off is you won't be able to use a Wirebug ability for longer than normal. If you burn all your Wirebugs in hard-hitting moves, you might find yourself in trouble when you need your oh crap button. The weapon that appealed to me most in Monster Hunter World was the Insect Glaive, because it would let me pogo jump into the air and flap around my enemies. With Wirebugs, that meant I could actually get into trying out other weapons, because now every weapon has the get me out of here button. If Wirebugs weren't enough of a mobility upgrade to Monster Hunter, the addition of Palamutes was another. A companion who you can whistle for a ride as needed? Who doesn't want that? There's far more verticality in Monster Hunter Rise maps. And yes, there was verticality in Monster Hunter World too, but if I slipped or got tossed off a cliff, I couldn't zip my way back with a Spider-Man shot and then wall run. Having Wirebugs to help me climb up stuff, and a Palamute to run faster on the ground, really just created a faster gameplay experience, and I really just enjoyed it. And this facilitated an experience where I actually sat down and learned the Monster Hunter mechanics, which has tempted me to go back to World to see maybe I'll appreciate World more now that I understand more of what's going on. But then I lose all this mobility, and I don't know if I can do that. As always, the unsung hero of video games is stuff in the background. I listened to music for a long time, but toggled it off after a few hundred hours. But for those first few hundred of hours, the music was great. Also, I do like me some good old feudal Japan aesthetic. The theming also works for everyone having ninja, aka Spider-Man-esque, moves with their Wirebugs and the default armor that you start out with. You might also notice I have the Monster Hunter language toggled on. so the characters speak in some Japanese-sounding language. You can switch between Monster Hunter language, Japanese, and English. My first time playing through, I listened to the English voices, but I much prefer the animated voices in Japanese or the Monster Hunter language. It's just an aesthetic choice I made for myself, and you can make for yourself. Sadly, when I don't have English on, I can't appreciate the rhymes you get for the cutscenes for every new monster. But with the Monster Hunter language, you get this epic chanting voice instead. Really, you should check out both language options, switching after playing for a few days to see if you like the other options. Monster Hunter seems to always make visually interesting worlds. After seeing each map, I only wanted to have more, which was a good indicator I'd want to replay the game when it came out on PC, and that I wanted to play the DLC too. I typically climb to the highest point on every map just to look around and take in the atmosphere. Then go back to taking in-game pictures for my monster decks, looking up rare endemic life, or gathering more materials and spirit birds. Monster Hunter Rise has been my favorite game in the series so far, and was actually successful in hooking me in. It's been fun to play on my own, and it's been fun to play in a group. Originally on World, it was like, okay, let's drag Atratzu through Monster Hunter World, one monster at a time. And I'd be over here counting the hours until I could play something else. Not so for Monster Hunter Rise. For Rise, so many things clicked for me, and I really just loved it. If you're still on the fence about getting Monster Hunter Rise, might I suggest the free demo on Steam? Not only will that let you make your own opinion, it will also let you see if your device can run it. Demos are good. Oh, and buy stuff on sale. What did we learn today? Well, for new players, if you just learned, choose a weapon, eat a meal, start the hunt, that's reasonable. I doubt that experienced players really got much from this review, except that I really need to go play a Spider-Man game. Hopefully it's understandable that I left so much out in hopes of not bogging people down with details. I probably still did some of that anyway. This is the problem with huge games which require many, many hours to play. Having Monster Hunter Rise compatible on Steam Deck is really good. That was one of the things I liked about playing it on the Switch. I could go play it on the big TV. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's the end of the video. Do all the things. Maybe I'll get around to making a Monster Hunter Sunbreak review. Or maybe I'll die of old age. Insert video outro here. I'm Atratzu. See ya.
Yeah.